Hey guys, Lord Naren White here, the Holy Ghost, the one true God. Back with you with the next video in my series, Great Expectations by Charles Dickens. Without further ado, returning to Great Expectations. And could I look upon her without compassion, seeing her punishment in the ruin she was, in her profound unfitness for this earth on which she was placed, in the vanity of sorrow, which had become a master mania, like the vanity of penitence, the vanity of remorse, the vanity of unworthiness, and other monstrous vanities that have been curses in this world. Until you spoke to her the other day, and until I saw myself in you, a looking glass that shewed me what I had once done myself, I did not know what I had done. What have I done? What have I done? And so again, 25 times over. What had she done? Miss Havisham, I said, when her cry had died away, you may dismiss me from your mind and conscience, but Estella is a different case. And if you can ever undo any scrap of what you have done amiss, in keeping a part of her right nature away from her, it will be better to do that than to bemoan the past through 100 years. Yes, I know it. But Pip, my dear. There was an earnest womanly compassion for me in her new affection. My dear, believe this. When she first came to me, I meant to save her from misery like my own. At first I meant no more. Well, said I hope so. But as she grew and promised to be very beautiful, I gradually did worse, and with my praises, and with my jewels, and with my teachings, and with this figure of myself, always before her a warning to back and point my lessons. I stole her heart away, and put ice in its place. Better, I could not help saying, to have left her a natural heart, even to be bruised or broken. With that, Miss Havisham looked distractedly at me for a while, and then burst out again. What had she done? If you knew all my story, she pleaded, you would have some compassion for me and a better understanding of me. Miss Havisham, I answered, as delicately as I could, I believe I may say that I do know your story, and have known it ever since I first left this neighborhood. It has inspired me with great commiseration, and I hope I understand it and its influences. Does what has passed between us give me any excuse for asking you a question relative to Estella? Not as she is, but as she was when she first came here. She was seated on the ground, with her arms on the ragged chair, and her head leaning on them. She looked full at me when I said this, and replied, Go on. Whose child was Estella? She shook her head. You don't know? She shook her head again. But Mr. Jaggers brought her here, or sent her here. Brought her here. Will you tell me how that came about? She answered in a low whisper and with caution. I had been shut up in these rooms a long time. I don't know how long. You know what time the clocks keep here. And when I told him that I wanted a little girl to rear and love and save from my fate, I had first seen him when I sent for him to lay this place waste for me, having read of him in the newspapers, before I and the world parted. He told me that he would look about him for such an orphan child. One night he brought her here asleep, and I called her Estella. Might I ask her age then? 2 or 3. She herself knows nothing, but that she was left an orphan and I adopted her. So convinced I was of that woman's being her mother that I wanted no evidence to establish the fact in my own mind. But, to any mind, I thought, the connection here was clear and straight. What more could I hope to do by prolonging this interview? I had succeeded on behalf of Herbert. Miss Havisham had told me all she knew of Estella. I had said and done what I could to ease her mind. No matter with what other words we parted. Twilight was closing in when I went downstairs into the natural air. I called to the woman who had opened the gate when I entered, that I would not trouble her just yet, but would walk around the place before leaving. For I had a presentiment that I should never be there again, and I felt that the dying light was suited to my last view of it. By the wilderness of casks that I had walked on long ago, and on which the rain of years had fallen since, rotting them in many places, and leaving miniature swamps and pools of water upon those that stood on end, I made my way to the ruined garden. I went all round it, round by the corner where Herbert and I had fought our battle, round by the paths where Estella and I had walked, so cold, so lonely, so dreary all. Taking the brewery on my way back, I raised the rusty latch of a little door at the garden end of it, and walked through. I was going out at the opposite door, not easy to open now, for the damp wood had started and swelled, and the hinges were yielding, and the threshold was encumbered with a growth of fungus, when I turned my head to look back. A childish association revived with wonderful force in the moment of the slight action, and I fancied that I saw Miss Havisham hanging to the beam. So strong was the impression that I stood under the beam shuddering from head to foot before I knew it was a fancy. To be sure, I was there in an instant. The mournfulness of place and time, and the great terror of this illusion, though it was but momentary, caused me to feel an indescribable awe as I came out between the open wooden gates where I had once wrung my hair after Estella had wrung my heart. Passing on into the front courtyard, I hesitated whether to call the woman to let me out at the log gate of which she had the key, or first to go upstairs and assure myself that Miss Havisham was as safe and well as I had left her. I took the latter course and went up. I looked into the room where I had left her, and I saw her seated in the ragged chair upon the hearth close to the fire, with her back towards me. In the moment when I was withdrawing my head to go quietly away, I saw a great flaming light spring up. In the same moment, I saw her running at me, shrieking with a whirl of fire blazing all about her, and soaring at least as many feet above her head as she was high. I had a double-caped great coat on, and over my arm another thick coat. That I got them off, closed with her, threw her down, and got them over her. That I dragged the great cloth from the table on the same purpose, and with it dragged down the heap of rottenness in the midst, and all the ugly things that sheltered there, that we were on the ground struggling like desperate enemies, and that the closer I covered her, the more wildly she shrieked, and tried to free herself. That this occurred I knew through the result, but not through anything I felt, or thought, or knew I did. I knew nothing until I knew that we were on the floor by the great table, and that patches of tinder yet alight were floating in the smoky air, which a moment ago had been her faded bridal dress. We'll go ahead and stop there for this week. As usual, I want to say thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed. please like, comment, and subscribe, as it greatly helps the channel. Light be with you all. Take care. And thanks again